Who I have with me right now is the man of the hour, the elder statesman of the family, the great from the Lone Star State, deep in the heart of Texas, my dad, Michael. How are you today?
I'm awesome, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Today, I'm happy you're the first guest
All
for
right.
multiple reasons. One of that is being that you sort of have an inside sort of scoop, I guess, on colleges and what athletic revenue means to colleges in general. Um, just a little bit of background. You were a few years in working at Oregon State the years 2006 and 2007 when they won the back-to-back national championships in baseball.
hmm
What were you doing during those years at that time? Like, what was your position there?
So during that year, I was in the Division of Business Affairs, which is basically the controller's office. So my job was to, you know, make sure all the stuff was going right, and I also worked with the athletics department from the central office standpoint, and working with the assistant athletic.
Uh-oh. I think you froze up a little bit.
Did I?
Yeah. Oh, you're back. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Did we catch all that?
uh, basically, but maybe the last part, just repeat that real quick.
Okay, yeah. So I was on the in the division of business affairs. So and in the controller, basically the controller's office there, and I was the liaison between that office and athletics department with the assistant director of finance at the assistant athletic director for finance and athletics department at Oregon State.
Cool. Yeah. While during your time there, you were or like the Beavers had won the national championship twice in a row for baseball. What is
Mhm.
usually the money sort from the athletics kind of spreads around to the school? Is that correct? What did that mean though for that for your department?
Well, for my department, it didn't mean much. We just managed the money that, watched overview the money that was coming in and going out. But, the way it worked back then, you got a cut of the revenue from like the World Series and all those kind of things, the TV revenue. They used to give you a cut of that as you became the champion. So we would see that money come into the revenue for the athletic department. So they would be able to use that. It covered all the expenses for the trips, right? And everything else, and maybe add a little left over.
Hmm.
But the biggest, so baseball brought, the athletic part brought more notoriety to Oregon State, not necessarily that much more money function.
Right. Okay. Um, but granted, with this sort of background here, you sort of have an idea of how kind of the system works, obviously, how it doesn't work, and most people when they look at things like NIL and paying the players, most people would assume that um, you know someone maybe in your position would be like, no, just give the money to the school. They don't deserve it. It's all about academics, blah blah blah. But definitely part of the reason why I wanted you on this specific sort of subject was not only were you kind of behind the scenes seeing at least seeing where the money's going and not going from athletic successes, but I think you have sort of the most interesting, nuanced opinion about things like NIL. So let's just start kind of from the beginning of
Sure.
your viewpoint on NIL and what that means, not only for the school but for the players and the athletics department.
All right. Well, so, from the NIL standpoint, and there's been a recent change now too with the revenue share piece coming along. So I've had to kind of been looking at that a little bit, and not from a it's coming up because the revenue share is an important piece across the campus at this point, depending on where you're at.
Mhm.
So, from my perspective, and the old days, the students used to get a free ride, get free food, and maybe a little job on campus to give them a little extra spending money. Um, and they made a lot of money for the campus, technically. I mean, for the athletics department. And what people need to realize is that the athletics department is supposed to cover all of their own stuff. Okay, so all the revenue that comes in should be covering all their expenses, all the stadium costs, and all of those things that they need to operate. While it's part of the university, it is like a business operation. So they call them auxiliaries on the campus. But all those kind of operations are like business functions. Housing and dining is an example of the same thing, where they got to make the money then cover their expenses by what they charge students for the food. So same thing with athletics, they got to make their money and cover their expenses by charging ticket prices and cutting TV deals and all of those kind of things to cover the travel and all that stuff. So from a functional standpoint, those entities on a college university campus are a business operation. Now, what happens when they don't make any money and when they lose the money? That's where it gets kind of squirrely, and where that's where the university actually has to either one, have huge donors to fill the gaps, or it has to come out of the university's budget, normal budget, to cover those deficits. So from a financing functionality, that's what happens. So where does that come from? That comes from tuition. It comes from tuition revenue. That comes from student. Some universities have student fees that cover the students' ticket costs, right? So some of that is part of it. But anything else, the universities have to pick up the tab. So that's kind of a function of the financing and the way the budgetary and other kinds of things happen on the campus. So now we have NIL. So NIL is where the students can sell their name, image, and likeness, right? And do some of that. And so that was okay, per se. Um, Students still were getting their scholarships. I mean, also just a way for the students to make money. And in my opinion, they should be able to make money off of their talent. They're providing talent. They're giving money, getting money. The university is bringing the revenue in. Students aren't getting any cut of that, but they should get the name recognition. So they should get a cut off of what they can get from the names and the endorsements that they might get out of that. So that's what NIL was designed to do, is to give them that, right?
Yeah.
Students are putting their bodies on the line in football, and they blow a knee out. They don't got any money, but if they have their name and their likeness, at least they made some money to do something, and you know, and that way they can, you know, keep moving forward. So that's kind of my nuance, I guess. Understanding is, I think NIL was a good thing for the students to make lots of money. There probably should have been. We need to have some boundaries around that so that they are, we got to remember these are young kids, college students that, don't know always how to manage their money either. So, I think they did some of those things that were pretty good in trying to help them manage that as well. So,
Yeah, I can only imagine when I was 17, 18 years old where my mind would be being thrown that much money to play D1 ball. Yeah,
mhm,
I largely agree with you because like you said, a lot of these kids, remember the old commercials during the football games was like, 98% of your favorite football player or whatever doesn't go pro. They go on to do something else, dentist,
that's right.
whatever, blah, blah, blah. And obviously that was the benefit of getting a full ride scholarship if you got one. Um, is that you are a dentist now with no school debt. But again, these colleges and universities, and especially the NCAA, are making billions of dollars off these guys playing, and some of these guys that could go pro, and that might be their only sort of way forward post college. You know, they blow out a knee, their shoulder goes out, they break an arm, they get paralyzed, something like that, and now they have nothing to show for it. And so it's not like the NFL either, where, you know, nowadays at least, maybe not so much in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but now, you know, the NFLPA is there, the Players Association is there to
Right.
sort of maybe help with medical things if there's some sort of debilitating injury where they can't work or anything like that. Those college kids don't really have that, but they're putting up the same amount of risk as the
Yeah.
pros are. So there should be some sort of monetary sort of collateral, if you will, that would shield them from, you know, I guess having their lives ruined, I guess, for lack of a better phrasing.
Yeah.
And of course, the NIL sort of came about too because, you know, you had well, who was it? Troy Smith, some Ohio State quarterback that like signed a jersey or something, and
Right.
that fan sold it on eBay or something, and he gets suspended for a game. It's like, okay, that's kind of ridiculous. Um,
Definitely.
and and you know, yeah, you have those sort of things that were sort of like, all right, come on, and so I think that obviously that's a good thing that sort of comes out of it. Now, obviously, like you mentioned before too. Oh, and another thing of the NIL too is the video game. That was
Yeah.
probably the biggest driver of how fast that they implemented the NIL. Was like, come on, it's been 10 years. You guys discontinue this game. We want to play. We want a new video game. And so finally, you know, EA Sports and the NCAA kind of caved, especially after some lawsuits, and we all finally got our video game back last year. Um, for better or for worse, you know, depending on, you know, a lot of the gamers, you know, have of course very opinionated on it, but we got it.
Sure. Yeah.
And now it's not QB number 3, it's the player that you actually watch on
Mhm.
television. So those are kind of obviously the main drivers of the NIL and kind of the system that's put in place. Now, there's a double-edged sword here because now you have the teams like Alabama fans, Florida fans, Tennessee, or not, maybe not so much Tennessee, but, you know, kind of the blue blood, traditional, purist SEC sort of schools that are saying, "Oh, now it's ruined college football," and it's like, okay, what does that mean to you guys? Because, you know, you guys were doing co-eds and Camaros before everyone else, giving a little wink and
Mhm.
nod. We're not paying you, but we're not paying you,
Right.
and getting and hogging all the sort of talent. Um, and now there's a little bit more parity between the teams now because they don't have that advantage anymore. Everyone has that
Right.
advantage. But what are the downsides to for you, maybe at least as NIL currently stands?
Well, I think to me the downsides to the NIL at this point is that um, it is a free agency type of attitude, right? And that's what I think that's going to be still some of the things that are going to come out with the revenue share, but probably less with the revenue share side of it. Look, if you got name, image, and likeness, and you are a five-star recruit, but then now you're on a two-bit team, then you're going to move on, right? And so you've got to move on to a place where you're going to get the reps and the recognition that you need. Not so that you're going to have to go somewhere where the contract and the TV contracts are up and everything else to get you out there to generate the interest in your name and likeness. So I think one of the dangers of it is that we have and look, we all know that the portal's open all the time, right? They can go in the transfer portal and transfer around really easy. So from that perspective, for the player perspective, it gives them free agency, which is good and bad in some reality. From the organizational aspect, it's really hard to manage that. And it does create some financial obligations on the contracting side of the NIL. So there's a potential for some issues going on there. That's kind of so as far as the sport goes, I think we're going to see a lot less, well, a lot fewer dynasty type operations going on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it's also going to be very hard for programs to be consistent over time as well as the players kind of move in and out. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I think they still haven't finished off some of the rules and regs around it. And so, but so far it hasn't gotten too bad, but we'll see how the revenue share side comes along with that.
Yeah, I think right now it is sort of a double-edged sword because you have to figure out the issues, and sometimes the only way to do that is for those issues to present themselves. Um, as a couple examples, last year there was a quarterback for Tennessee. His name was Nico Iamaleava,
Yeah.
and he transferred to UCLA this year. And actually, the quarterback that was at UCLA transferred to Tennessee. So it was sort of like a backdoor trade, if you will.
Sure.
UCLA is 0-2 right now and not playing very well. Tennessee is looking to be in playoff contention for the second year in a row. Um, Montana State, who Oregon played in the first game of the season, um, the quarterback used to be the quarterback for Stanford, and he transferred to Montana State. And then, of course, last week Oregon played Oklahoma State and shellacked them 69-3. It was a bloodbath.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
and Mike Gundy, the coach of Oklahoma State, made some comments before the game about basically that we can't compete with Oregon because they have all this money and resources, a la Phil Knight, and we can't really compete. This last year they went like 2, 3, and 9.
Yeah.
Obviously, this year they're not much better and possibly worse. And then a couple years before that, they were one of the more higher ranked teams. So you're seeing a distinct sort of drop in their program, and everyone's looking at Mike Gundy um, being let go. So you're seeing kind of a double-edged sword of
Yeah.
guys who transfer a lot. There's sort of a drop off now in sort of their star power, if you will, because it's like, okay, this guy's transferring too much. He's not transferring into great positions. And then now you have like FCS schools that are taking like FBS talent and bringing them down. So it's like they're kind of getting better. Um, and and then you have guys that a lot of the complaints about Gundy and after the beatdown, Oregon coach Dan Lanning said about one of the players, Bryce Betcher. He came out of South Eugene. He walked onto the baseball team and the football team. Now he is a potential All-American in football. He's already been drafted by the Astros in baseball. He's now like a big time middle linebacker, captain of the football team type player. And Lanning sort of swipe at Gundy was like he showed up for a t-shirt and a backpack.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily all about money. It's kind of how you plan ahead in the age of the NIL. And also everyone's like, well, Gundy, you don't necessarily have an excuse because Oklahoma State had T. Boone Pickens
Sure.
until he died in 2019. And obviously he died before the NIL era. But again, there's sort of a way to plan ahead on that. The going theory was Gundy was making those comments though because he's been unhappy with sort of um, his NIL or just revenue, the amount of money coming into the program, and he was sort of trying to say like, look, this is what we need. Look at Oregon and look at us. We need more money. Let's start making this happen. So I guess
Well,
what? Yeah.
yeah. So one of the things we haven't kind of hit on too is we looked at the universities as athletics and tuition based and functional state funding balance. But what we haven't talked about is endowments.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
this is where the difference comes in big time. So Phil Knight can put a ton of money into endowments, and that money is less restricted because he can say, use it for what you want, and by legal means and by the legalities of the endowment arena, Oregon can say, okay, and we'll use it for everybody we want. So we can make any decision around that money we want. Sometimes endowments come in and says you need to build a building with that.
Hmm.
That's what has to happen with that money. This has to go to scholarshiping students with, blue eyes, red hair, and, you know, duck lips, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what that money has to be used in. And so this is where the disparity is going to show up some more going forward. That's where the disparity on the NIL side came in because you can backfill NIL with that kind of money.
Yeah.
So you can come in and say, okay, we're going to give you an NIL contract here and we're going to guarantee you're going to make $1 million off of that NIL while you're here. Well, if they want to take off and it's not happening, then you're contracted with that. You either got to pay that contract or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other side of some of this that has been going on. So that's one of the things that they're trying to flesh out, right? So, um, and so as that, so we have to address the donor side of all of this.
Yeah.
And so Phil Knight's got a ton of money. We all know that, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't just give it to athletics, right? He's done some big things,
He
and
builds the school as a whole for sure. Yeah.
he did that. But he's also gave 500 million. What's it? A match of 500 million, I think it was, to OHSU in Oregon
Hmm.
for cancer research. So
Yeah.
again, there's some balancing points in here that we want to make clear. So it should always be about the student and getting their degree, finishing their education, right? That's their students first functionally. That's
Yeah.
why they say student athlete. Even grad students that aren't athletes, they can work 20 hours a week. Students can work 20 hours a week by laws and, and on campus, but they're students first. I mean, that's the campus idea. Um, so again, that that's a big piece of this is why Gundy's complaining is because Oregon has a good steady income off of the endowment side of that, where their endowments are not being used to support that, right? So
Yeah.
there is going to be some of this, but that's why the Alabamas, that's why the Texas, that's why all of those big programs can keep pouring money into athletics because they got big money in those endowments that they can use for that. So that's where the real disparity is going to start showing up eventually. Um, that, but the caps on the revenue sharing side has some extra stuff in there. So we can talk about that in a little minute. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that
Yeah. No. For sure. I mean, it's great you mentioned endowments too, because if we're following the logic of more money equals more sort of athletic success or program success, Harvard would be better than Alabama and Ohio State combined because they have $40 billion in endowments. They're the richest
mhm,
university in the country. And so it's like, obviously it goes to what you choose for that money to go to because,
right,
Harvard's not. they're
yeah,
they're 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 not quite up there on that scale. Yeah, so I definitely think it really comes down to choice and what you choose to invest in, and that's kind of how it was for
right,
Oregon in the beginning anyway. Because you know I've gone over this plenty of times, but Nike wasn't really a thing until like the mid '90s when
yeah,
Michael Jordan put on those shoes in the NBA.
yep,
So it wasn't really until then that Phil Knight even had money to give to Oregon in the first place. And then it wasn't until the 1994 Rose Bowl team that he was like, oh, there's something here that I can maybe help build on. And so it wasn't until like what 96, 97, even a year or two after that, that any of that investing was really taking off. So it really does come down to what you choose that money from those endowments too, and just from the boosters in general, what that even goes to. Because also on the flip side, in the 80s, they were essentially holding bake sales to keep Autzon's lights on,
Sure.
so it really comes down to that choice. And once that choice was made, it was kind of all guns blazing on that.
Yeah,
Um,
you got to be able. So again, so let's go back to the fact that the athletic side is a business operation, right? So they got to bring revenue in to pay the bills. They got to be able to pay those coaches that $5 million a year, right?
yeah,
And if he sucks, they got to cash him out. So
yeah,
that's part of that. So you have to have that donor base to smooth those things out over time, but also to make the research stadiums at Oregon State and to make the Autzen stadiums and all the Mahashovskis and
hmm
all of those things. You've got that. That's where it brings notoriety. It brings it's all part of the marketing. It's all tied into marketing, but also you got to have the facilities. You got to have all these things so kids can want to come. It's like any other business. I mean,
yeah,
really, you got to advertise your product
and
and you
compete.
got to have a good product and you have to compete with that and you have to have a good product that people want to buy and that people want to see or whatever. So it's an entertainment dollar. That's why when I moved to Texas and I was at University of Texas Arlington, they don't have football.
Yeah,
And it's because why? Well, because right there in Arlington, you've got Dallas Cowboys, you got the Texas Rangers,
hmm
and not too far away, you got TCU football, and you've got all of this competition in there. Nobody wants to go to some football stadium at a university that, the high school stadiums around the area are better. So,
I know. It's crazy.
it's like, so you've got to be strategic. And so this is the other side is being about being strategic as you move forward. But that is a university strategy. It's not just an athletic department strategy.
Yeah,
That's part of it, but it has to be combined with the total university strategy because the university needs to build more buildings for science. For we're trying to build a building at our university for my college that I'm working for. We need a building, right?
yeah,
So um, our current building is not functional all the way. It's got things, but as we move forward strategically, we need more space to do more things, to teach more students, to do to do more research and those kind of things. So um, and we can talk about research and all that other stuff on someone else, but that's a
right.
whole different ball game, right?
Yeah,
So that's it's about balancing all these competing things and trying to help. I know at my school and at our university, we're really concerned because it's a private, so we have to really be tuition conscious. We don't want them. We're trying how not to saddle our students with a lot of debt. How can we? So we're more focused on maybe building our endowment on the scholarship side. Our athletic facilities are pretty good, are really actually excellent. So now we build on the scholarship side to get more students, more general population students, more money too. So the focus is always on the athletic side of this, but we need to find ways to help the general students
Mm.
populations in all of our universities be able to afford going to school
yeah,
and not be saddled with this debt. And it can be done.
yeah. And like you said before, or did you say before too that oftentimes the pay for some of these school or some of these players, I should say, um, comes from tuition money?
Well, it not so well within the before revenue share
Hmm
is coming on, and before that, you would have students doing jobs around campus, which is operational money from student tuition. But
mm
we have tons of other students working, right? I mean, my office, we have 3 students that do jobs for us. We have students all through our colleges, all through our university doing, you know, jobs for, filing, keeping at the desk and doing some jobs to, for once, some of it's experiential learning for kids and everything else, but some it's just to help them pay their, put food and to take care of their expenses. And so that's tuition operational money that we have from the tuition revenue to do our operations as well to help teach students. So it's, that's the goal of it. So the student athletes prior to the NIL and prior to this revenue share, that would be the functionality of how they're getting paid and supported.
Mm.
Now, tuition dollars sometimes have to go into the athletic department as a whole because they've had a hole, right? Or
Yeah.
they've gone into debt on something, or they had something major come up and they didn't have the reserves. Most of us try to make sure that they're putting stuff in the reserves for equipment and everything else. I know at Oregon State we required them to take a percentage of the revenue and set it into the reserves for these areas. That's probably pretty systematic over. It's just good practice, best practice, so that you have those reserves. But life can happen. So big time stuff. So um, the most universities have moved away from the student tuitional dollars support to make sure that they are operating in that business mode, making sure. That's why you see coaches getting fired. That's why you see a wholesale changes and that stuff, because they've got to make sure that the product is good because the revenue has to come in. So
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, if you have a bad program that doesn't invest maybe in the program, or um, they lose a lot of money because of it, and then obviously because you can't pull in the talent with not as much money, um, that's bad for everybody. And so it really does kind of make a difference if you're making sure your revenue makers are actually making revenue on that, because it's a ripple effect.
well, if you suck, you're not on ESPN making money off the TV rev, and
Hmm.
no donors want to give you money.
Right.
Bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
What, someone says, "Hey, donate to this." Why should I? If you guys, suck, I'm not going to get anything
Yeah,
out of it. I might as well just light that
yeah,
money on fire.
yeah. They either want to put their name on it, something, or they want the recognition. So that's the donor mentality on them.
Yeah. And I think too, the balancing act with all of this is Jim Ross, legendary commentator and talent relations for WWE for a long time and now at AEW. He says most wrestlers leave a company over two things: cash or creative.
Mm-hmm.
And in creative, in the football term, is probably playing time.
Yep.
So if we have Oregon starting quarterback Dante Moore, um, actually originally, very originally, um, uh, committed to Oregon, and then he ended up transferring to UCLA. Struggled at UCLA. A lot of it had to do with um, the fact that Chip Kelly, he was the coach at the time, but he obviously always has one foot out the door. I don't really think
Yeah.
he was never really that involved after Oregon in really any team that he's ever really been with. And even in Oregon, he could really give a crap about recruiting. He just wanted guys that would play his game and didn't really
Sure.
think about recruiting. And so he struggled at UCLA and actually transferred back to Oregon, sat behind Dylan Gabriel last year for a year to kind of learn and develop a little bit better instead of just kind of being thrown to the wolves. And
Mm-hmm.
now he's starting this year for Oregon and playing very well. And overall, it probably has helped his draft stock as time
Mm-hmm.
goes by, depending, obviously, we're only going into week 3. So it really still has a lot yet to be learned about him, especially in high pressure situations and things like that. But he's
Sure.
got at least 1 year and potentially 2 more to go to really up his draft stock, where he might have been considered a bust if he stayed at UCLA and kind of kept pushing it. But he kind of had the maturity to realize, maybe the quality of my playing time isn't as great. I'm gonna take that creative or that creative or playing time hit for a year to maybe build up my not only my NIL but my playing time to be much better. So I don't think it's overall. I don't think it's purely just money. That I know a lot of people think, um, oh, just chase the bag. Go get the money, follow wherever the most money is, blah blah blah. But I think there's a lot going on in players' heads that is more than just money, which I think Oregon probably could spend a lot more on players, but in fact, they might be in top five, but they're in top five. They're not the top. They're
Yeah.
not spending, they're not just throwing money at players. They're trying to get them to sort of come in and buy into the culture of the program over just chasing the bag. So I think there's sort of a natural balancing act that's happening in that. But I still think there might have to be some more regulations in the sort of NIL world of like
Yeah.
there's got to be some sort of clauses in contracts where it's like you can't just up and leave and I don't know, play for I don't know because that again it's tough because you have guys that in the NFL that get traded and they can play the next week. But a lot of people in the college world because they sort of see it now as NFL 2.0 but they still kind of see it as an abuse of the system.
Well, one of the things that they got rid of was the 1 year sit, right?
Yes.
So you can go into you can go into the transfer portal and play next time, right? And so, here's the scenario, right? Some kid comes in, you drive, you work hard to get this kid into your program so he starts the fall year, and then you have him, so you've got what, maybe 3 months before that you've been working with him, a little longer probably, but a new kid coming in, right? And so then he comes in and he's here for 6 months during during the football season, enters the portal and is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've spent all that effort on this kid for just 6 months and gotten nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's the real problematic area that this is causing, is that this is when those kids are coming in and chasing the bag, right?
Yeah.
And I think, most kids are not doing that, but you're getting a lot of the high profile kids are all doing that and going all around. And it doesn't help for program stability either.
No.
And so, I mean, from a I hire people, right? I'm looking for someone to hire right now. And I need to look at them from the perspective that if I'm going to invest all this money in hiring them and all this effort into hiring this person, I need them to stick around for a certain level of time. I don't
Yeah.
expect them to stay with me forever because then I'm a bad manager if I don't help that person progress
Yeah.
and move on to the next best thing. So that makes me a bad manager if I don't do that. So, but I need to get, you know, 3 to 5 years out of that person for sure.
Yeah.
So again, you're teaching kids the wrong lesson here is to, chase immediate gratification when, you got to be in it for the long haul as well, right? And so you've got to kind of pace into that. And so there's more than just the money lessons here. There's the life lessons that kids need to learn. That life doesn't come at not everything drops in your lap right away. That building character and everything else. You hear some coaches talk about this, and most of them are really about that. But it's important, and we don't want to lose that piece of it either.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, I can't tell you, all the life lessons that I still apply today in my time in just from my time in organized sports. Never had the making of a varsity athlete, we'll say, but not playing D1 or anything, but just being on teams and organized sports gives you those valuable life lessons that even as you get older, you think, it's kind of like back in the day. You're like, when am I going to use this math, in my life and geometry or trigonometry or, geometry or algebra. When am I going to use this? And suddenly, you're having to build a shed or something and you find yourself using that that the actual the knowledge that you didn't think was, but is actually applicable now. Uh, I definitely think that um, coaches are still working hard at keeping that element in sports there, despite people thinking that oh, money is just the only thing that they're chasing money. I think, like I said, like the playing time for Dante Moore wasn't that great at UCLA. And just think too, like if you're not really a sports person or someone who maybe has experienced that, how kind of a mature decision that really is to say, you know what, I'm going to ride the bench for a year and learn.
Hmm.
For a guy like him, a 5-star number one quarterback in the country at the time he was being recruited, for most guys like that at that level of superstardom, we'll say, uh, that's kind of a hit to the ego, and you almost don't want to do that. You're like I said, the natural impulse might be, no, I'm going to sling the ball around in the Rose Bowl at UCLA until it get it right. Um, and sometimes it's kind of a sunk cost fallacy where you kind of dig yourself a deeper hole.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
imagining the actual mature decision it is to be like, you know what, I have some areas to improve. Maybe this area or this setting that I'm working in isn't going to help me improve. I'm going to go maybe where I should have originally gone before or somewhere else. He could have just not gone to Oregon and gone to another great program
Hmm.
and said, I'm going to learn and improve and develop under behind a quarterback that I respect and behind a coach that I do respect. Now, originally his decommitment from Oregon was that the guy who recruited him, Kenny Dillingham, went on to coach at head coach at Arizona State. So he
Hmm.
kind of left for coaching reasons, more just like he didn't really know Will Stein, the new offensive coordinator. So he kind of he kind of felt like maybe in no man's land, just kind of went to UCLA. And then once he kind of saw that the new OC was he's someone I can learn under and trust, he went back.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different situation. Julian Sayin came out of Carlsbad here in San Diego. Originally committed to Alabama. He wanted to play under Nick Saban. Nick Saban retires. He transfers to Ohio State and is now starting at Ohio State this year under Coach Ryan Day, and another sort of lauded coach who has proven himself to be a great developer as well. So I think there's a lot that kind of goes in behind um, a player's decision.
Mhm.
That's more than money, but obviously you want to get the best deal you can.
Sure.
But I think luckily there are coaches out there that are sort of still holding true to the life lesson thing, the building character thing, um, making them, turning them from boys to men, if you will,
Yeah.
type of thing. Because we're talking about like revenue share TV deals and stuff, all that. I think it's also kind of a perfect segue into the sort of big picture conference realignment. We're sort of seeing, I think this is a lot of the reason too why people attach NIL to the destruction of college football is the conference realignment stuff where now you have Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA all in the Big Ten now. And the Pac 12 got left with Oregon State and Washington State, and sort of regional conferences have um, uh, become a thing of the past, if you will, with Stanford and Cal in the ACC of all places. Uh, and so, but you're seeing sort of the death of the regional conference, and
Well, hey, don't forget the Big 12 over here. We picked up
that's right, the Big 12,
Arizona, Utah, and Arizona State, and who else? Colorado, I think it was, wasn't it?
Colorado. Yeah, that's right, the
And
Big 12.
BYU is there. It is.
Yeah,
So we're now the Big 25, just like,
right,
it's the Big 35 where Oregon went, right?
right.
So,
Yeah, and yeah, the Big 12 too, absorbing those other Pac-12 teams that didn't
yeah,
really make the cut for the Big Ten.
right.
Um, and so the problem is though is Salty Beaver fans blame the Ducks. Wazoo fans blame the
Huskies.
Huskies. And overall, though, I think everyone blames USC.
Yeah.
and A lot of that
And
though, I think um, there's a level of credibility to that, but when I was sort of researching what happened to the Pac-12 over the years, and you and I sort of experienced this ourselves,
mhm,
this was the Pac-12 conference's fault overall because
mhm.
number one, they released the Pac-12 network because they saw um what the SEC was doing with ESPN and so on, the Big Ten network becoming a thing too, so on and so forth. So they say, okay, we're gonna take all the old Beaver and Duck games we watched in the mid 2000s with Petros Papadakis, on the
Oh,
Versus Network
yeah.
or FSN, right? Right? Yeah. uh,
That was fun.
yeah, that was a fun era.
Yes,
That was a
boy,
fun era.
that guy used to drive me crazy.
I know. Now they're kind of days that I sort of look fondly back upon, but at the time I was like, come on, don't be such a USC homer.
Yeah.
Um, but all these different sort of regional channels, the Pac-12 was like, we're not going to need you anymore. We're going to make the Pac-12 network. And then they get greedy with all the cable providers and leading to all these cable providers being like, uh, we're just going to walk from these deals then. You're asking for too much money. Like, go take a hike. And then after that, too, so that problem there is every time we would get an email, no matter what, Comcast, Dish, DirecTV, we don't have Pac-12 this year. We couldn't strike a deal. We don't have Pac-12 network this year. We couldn't strike a deal. So you can't even see these guys. And the whole thing
Yeah.
about being on television and getting television deals is getting on television. And you're asking for,
Because it's revenue, people.
yeah. And so you're asking for too much money right off the bat. Here's the thing, when you're a new channel or a new network, you have to kind of eat crow just a little bit. Okay. If they're gonna we want $50 million per year or whatever, and they say, right now you're new, we don't know how you're gonna take off. You're only worth like 25 to us.
Mhm,
At that point, take the deal and renegotiate later after the contract
mhm.
is up. Prove yourself first and say, look, these past 2 years we've been worth way more than 25 million per year.
Yeah.
Let's renegotiate and then renegotiate. Instead, you say, piss off. I want all the money right away, right off the bat. They're going to tell you to kick rocks, and now you're screwed with nothing. And then their Pac-12 might be striking a deal with ESPN, and they do the same thing. And it's no shock that a year or two later, everyone's leaving the Pac-12 conference and they're going to the Big Ten or the Big 12, where they already have deals. They already have TV deals. And Oregon, frankly, in particular, and I think Washington too, they only got a half share revenue. So they took a huge they sort of took a pay cut versus the rest of the teams that went over to the Big 10 or Big 12 just to be on TV and exposed to the rest of the country. Like that's and but as we're talking about, that revenue share hurts the programs.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what I so I was in the business affairs office when that Pac-12 network deal started happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
here's how the rest of the stuff kind of works on some of that too. So the reason why bowls are important is the coaches will say, well, it gives them extra practice, blah blah blah. Okay, but the whole point is you want as many of your conference in the bowl games because that's pooled revenue,
Mm-hmm.
and that revenue gets shared everywhere. So you want as many of your teams in those bowl games and sharing all that revenue and getting those cuts. So that once they pay for all your expenses to go to the bowl game, everybody that then you get a cut off that share, right? And so that's the point. That's where the bowl games really are at,
Yeah.
right? So don't let these people fool you. It's not about getting them extra practice and all the other stuff. It's tied to cash and it goes to the if you're in the conference, it usually goes to the conference, right? So the pack the network and I think the original reason for the network was good. I think it was sound at the beginning.
It was, yeah,
It
for sure.
helped. It helped the smaller programs build their programs. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I can remember. I can remember transferring $15 million into Oregon to the Beavers athletic department to float them until all the donor and all the ticket sales came in,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so we didn't have to, after that contract came in, we wouldn't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
We knew the revenue was going to show because we had fixed revenue stream, right? So that helped those programs, those small programs. This is why Oregon State, Washington State are a little pissed off, and they should be,
Yeah.
because the big boys screwed them.
Hmm.
All right. The big boys screwed them and took advantage of them because they weren't as big a programs or big as, they weren't the big names. They had some solid athletic programs for a while there, but everything else. But they needed that money just to stay afloat and to keep moving forward and moving up.
Hmm.
So, they were being competitive.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but, when the conference itself screwed that up,
Yeah.
in my opinion, they screwed that deal by getting too greedy, and then they left the little guys out to dry. Look, Washington State and Oregon State are two big schools. I mean,
Hmm.
they're the land grant schools, and so they're all over the state, right? And so that's, from an educational standpoint, those are big schools. But from a sports standpoint, they're fair to middling, right?
Yeah.
They have good years sometimes, and then they have some struggles, right? So,
Yeah.
but that's the point, is that the conferences screwed it up. The Pac-12 conference screwed that up, you know, and
I agree.
they the network was supposed to be their cash cow, and it was working till they came in and got too greedy and didn't ease up the chain, right?
Yeah. No,
So, so
I agree totally. Because I mean, people don't really real or maybe they obviously know and realize it, but they don't really acknowledge it just because it's a fun trash talk point. Oregon, Oregon and Washington, the two schools in particular, as much as you hate the Huskies, they both those schools were sort of the last chopper out of Vietnam.
yeah,
Like I said, those two in particular, I'm pretty sure Washington's the same, but Oregon for sure, they took a half share of revenue just to get in the Big Ten. Originally, the Big Ten were like, we're just taking USC. Like they didn't really necessarily want them there, which made it all more funny that Oregon won the Big Ten last year. Um, but so like they're taking half of the revenue share of like bowl games and things like that from conference um, versus everyone else. So even if Oregon won the national championship last year versus Ohio State, they still would have gotten half the money that Ohio State would have and did. So it's
mm-hmm.
like they were the last chopper out of Vietnam, and unfortunately Oregon State and Wazoo were the two that got left behind and have to rebuild the Pac-12 conference.
Yeah,
But I think overall, again, great trash talking points, and I won't begrudge Beaver and Cougar fans of that. But uh, their ire is not directed at the right people in terms of it was the conference, it was not those other teams necessarily.
yeah.
It sort of
Well,
started with USC trying to leave in the first place because again, they're the LA market.
yeah,
They're market two behind New York. They're the second biggest market in the country. And they felt that the Pac-12 networks and those media deals weren't doing it for them. They wanted more exposure type deal, so they decided to move to the Big Ten. So USC was kind of the spark on the gas of the Pac-12 that sort of lit it all on fire, if you will. So
yeah.
USC was more the symptom of the problem and not the problem. But also screw the Trojans. I was kidding.
Well, yeah, screw 'em. Not a fan.
Yeah.
But sorry, Luke, but no.
Right. We have a Trojan in our family. It's all respectful trash talk. No.
But he was a reviewer before that, so that's
Right, yeah.
okay. So, but that's again. So I mean, all the conferences have been struggling with some of that, right? Because Big 12, they had Texas and OU leave, right?
Yep.
For the
Yep.
SEC, A&M left for the SEC. So, they had to come in back and pick up some teams too. So
Yep. Yep.
this is the restructuring that's going on. Is really that's what's happening. Is where's the best capabilities for people to continue to make the revenue stream that they need to keep viable. And this is where you know this is where because these are business decisions that have to be made. This is the business part of it that you can't get away from because of the nature of what you have to do. So those are so people out there, you got to be, you take your TV deals, but we all know that's why the Montana states go to Oregon, right? Because it's a payday,
Yep. Yep.
because they get paid.
Yep.
And, it's probably embarrassing to take your 500K for the game to get your butts handed to you.
Right.
But that builds humility in your people. It builds humbleness, and it builds the desire to get better, right? And so that you can have the other guys come into your place and you can pay them 500 to beat up on them.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how now with the revenue share portion for the players, that's coming out of that group money, right?
Yeah.
So this is where we're getting to on that is that now the players are getting cut off that revenue stream. Now it's capped at 20.5 million for the programs, each program. So if we want to, and from what I've been seeing is that, um, most of we all know most of that's going to go to football, but and if you look at the roster levels, that makes sense to divide it up by the number of people on the rosters. So I'm looking at I look at some preliminary numbers for somebody that on one of the websites, and just kind of looking, what does that break down?
Mhm.
So football players. Let's just take football players, since that's most of what I've been talking.
Yeah.
Most of the schools are really going to hit football, men's basketball, and women's basketball are the three big monies, right? Technically they're your revenue generators. Nothing else pull them money. So those are going to get the lion's share. Football is going to get the lion's share. Men's basketball is barely behind them, and then women's basketball and the rest of them. You know, the women's field hockey team gets some money, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, we haven't. We've been. It's going to be interesting to see how the Title IX works out on some of this, because
Yeah.
I'm hearing programs are being cut and everything else to make these money things happen well, right?
Yeah.
So we got to look at it. There's going to be roster caps. So football, I think, is at 105 kids, right? So you have 105 students on there, and looks what I'm seeing is most of the programs are going to be putting about 15 million to the football players out of that revenue share to share with them. So I did the numbers, and what that comes out to is about 142,857 a year for 6 months' work for each student, right, or for the year
Hmm.
for each football player. Now, what I also noticed was they still get their NIL, they still get their scholarships, they still get their donor collaborative monies and other things so this is gravy on the train, right? I mean,
Hmm.
so this is their steady income, and the rest of this becomes the gravy, right?
Yeah.
So these guys are going to be in good shape, and so the problem is that's 20K off the top of the revenue stream to the programs, and so that comes out of their share of the revenues.
Yeah.
So now, when you look at the revenue sharing from to the programs in the conference, everybody just got whacked 20 million. So guess where that has to come from? Somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
So somewhere, everybody's got to find $20 million in their budget to support this stuff. So that's the kind of the conversations that are happening on campuses now is if I have a program and I'm in a conference and but my program is a little underwater and I still got to pay out 20 million to my players, if I can't do that, if I can't do that across my things, and especially in football, if I can't make 142K to each player, guess what's going to happen? They're going to go where they're going to get 142K,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And they're not
Because
necessarily the blankers either.
the NIL will stay with the player because that's their stuff, right? So his NIL travels with him. That's outside the realm of all this, and so that's what's going to be interesting as we go forward to see how this is all going to play out. And I think from what I've seen in the things, I haven't looked at it super in depth, but just kind of on the surface level, the things are in place to kind of monitor this stuff and to kind of keep track of it all. So, but I know at our university, we're trying to figure out the 20 million, right? How do we do that when we're maybe breaking even or just barely above water on some of the athletic stuff, right? Because we're in a down spot or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's the point, and we're still trying to work on the donor base for some things and other things, and so from that perspective, that's the perspective everybody has to remember is that 20 million's got to come from somewhere. And so if you're not in a conference, all those guys that aren't in the big conferences making the big money, there's going to be a lot of their players looking for that $150,000 roughly paycheck, and you're not going to be able to compete with that in the smaller areas. So you're just going to have to be able to give them what they can, what you can, and hope for the best.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And um so as I guess this might be a final question.
Sure.
Thank you for doing this, and this has been fun.
Yeah.
As we close
Well,
this
it is getting
discussion,
close to my bedtime too.
I
So
noticed, yeah, yeah. There's a West Coast, was it East Coast time or Central time?
I'm central.
Central, that's right. You're still
Yeah.
Central.
Yeah.
Where do you think things are going to be going in the future with everything? How do you foresee what's kind of your forecast of what the college football itself landscape is going to look like, and maybe the business side of it, how all that cash and creative sort of collides?
Well, I think, going forward, I think right now we're, as the universities are at, as it's really in this change mode because the rules change. We have that in other areas, like, I don't know if everybody's been hearing like the NIH is cutting down the overhead costs on the research grants and things, and that impacts us, right? That covers a lot of our building costs that we apply to the research. So we're really just recovering some of the money that we spend on those buildings and administrative stuff to monitor to do that, but also pay for the bill, right? So those costs are not necessarily, those are legitimate costs to be recovered, right? And so it's just like time and materials for a construction guy, right?
Yeah,
That's what it is. So here's the research, we're doing the research, and here's the activity we're doing. And then the overhead comes in, and that's for the materials and other stuff that we need to do the activity. So but we're going to see the same thing happening where we're trying to navigate that and retool our budgetary aspects on that side of it. And now we've got athletics coming in with this part of that. And so we're in this retooling mod of things that we have to do on the university campuses to, you know, do our operations, right? And what we do and providing the environment for our students to have nice entertainment and sports and, high quality educational experiences that we can provide them with some real world experience that they can take out, become productive members of society, and hopefully not cave the whole thing down. We won't go into any of that. But I
anything
think
else?
most of the universities and stuff are in the planning mode. I don't see anything fundamental. regulatory is going to be the big aspect at this point. How the regulations are going to come out and how the monitoring of what happens going forward is going to happen. And we'll just have to see how many of the kids are really into the money and how many of them are into the because they're there for the actually for the educational aspect of it and they're going to get their education. That's the other part of it. These guys that move around all over, your educational experience sucks.
Yeah, how could it really be, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're just getting, you just, you could do all that online, right? And
Mm,
Coursera.
right.
So, just go to the pros already,
Yeah.
but that's the other fallacy is that, they have to go to college before they can go to the pros. Well, that's stupid in this case now. It's not going to be worth, why are we making the colleges waste resources on guys who are just going to bounce around so they can get out? So, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out. I think for the most part we'll get there and settle into the right norm again, but right now the norm's kind of messed up. And
Yeah.
so the bottom line is we just want to enjoy some football. We want to enjoy some good basketball. We want
Yeah.
to enjoy the sports. We want to be able to go to the games. Part of the atmosphere is awesome. It's a lot of fun to be at the games and everything else, and it brings the community together. It does a lot of positive stuff. Brings revenue into the community as well from the visiting. There's a lot of positives about it. We just got to ride this out until everything's settled out and we get to the 90-day norm, the new base. So I think we'll all get there. It's just who's got to get paid and who's got to get all this stuff done to get it all done. So
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the future is as dystopian as others will paint it out to be. There are obviously some improvements that need to be made, some tweaks, and it's like a beta system of a software. You just find the bugs, fix them as you go, patch them up, and everything like that. I don't think it's neither utopian or dystopian. There will be again some issues that need to be handled, but for now, it's sort of just a wait and see approach and just enjoy the ride.
yeah, well, like anything else in life, it's in the balance point that matters. It's not the swings to the extremes, right?
Exactly.
And so we've got too many of the extremes going on in society today. We just need to find the right balance.
Agree totally. Dad, thank you for doing
Yes,
this.
sir.
You were a fantastic first guest. Hopefully,
Thanks, man.
we can do this another time too.
Yeah, we'll do that, man. Love you, buddy.
Love you
And we'll see
too.
you later.
All right. See ya.